There was a time when rifle builds used to be the best red builds in the entire game. You could go with 3 Providence defense pieces, 1 Grupo Sombra, 1 Cesca Vairoba and the Fox Prayer knee pads with glass cannon and vigilance on the backpack. Maybe you could get Contractor's Gloves in there instead of the Grupo Sombra, and maybe you could go with Obliterate instead of Glass Cannon, but overall the main idea of the build was always the same. And that's it, you had the best red build, or at least what the majority of the player base considered to be the best red build for quite a long time, right after Warlords of New York came out, of course. However, as time moved forward, with the sword rifles getting a lot of love ever since then, with Striker gear set getting a rework, with Heartbreaker, and overall the player base viewing the meta subject differently now compared to back then, rifle builds seem to have disappeared for the most part, even though they never really got nerfed. However, with Project Resolved buffing a lot of the rifles, and Season 1 of Year 6 introducing a new gear set that revolves around rifles, I thought it was a good time to talk about rifle builds again and what has changed from 3 years ago. Also, another reason, and obviously the main reason I want to make this video, is just, a friendly reminder to those who saw the new gear set on the PTS and thought that it was a good enough gear set, since they seem to have forgotten how powerful this 4 or 5 year old build is even today. First things first, after Project Resolved, the king of rifles has changed. The M1A Classic, even though it still does more damage per shot compared to most rifles, can't keep up with its RPM, so over a period of time, most rifles will out DPS it. Apparently, the new best rifle in the game is the M1A CQB, which even though has lower damage per shot compared to the classic M1A, it has double the RPM. Now, I'll showcase 2 builds in today's video. The first one is the more powerful version, but the second one is easier to use and offers much more consistent DPS in my opinion. So, no surprises here. Starting with the more powerful red build, we're using the M1A CQB with damage targets out of cover and the flatline talent. For the flatline talent, to be efficient, we're going to use the Technician specialization with the linked laser sight, which will allow us to spot anyone we are aiming at, and it will proc flatline and spotter at the same time, and they will always be active. The mask is the Coyote mask for the extra critical hit chance and critical hit damage, 2 Providence defense pieces for the 10% headshot damage and the 10% critical hit chance. One of them is the named backpack The Gift with perfect vigilance talent on it, but even with the normal version of it you will do just fine. 1 Grupo Sombra piece, which also happens to be my chest piece in this build. We want the Grupo Sombra for the 15% critical hit damage, spotter on the chest piece as we already said to get that extra amplified damage, the Contractor's Gloves for the 8% damage to armor, and the last piece of the build is the Fox Prayer knee pads for the 8% damage targets out of cover and the 10% rifle damage. All the rolls on the pieces we just went over are obviously weapon damage when it comes to the core attribute, and then the 2 other attributes on each piece are critical hit chance and critical hit damage, except 1 roll which is headshot damage on the chest piece, but I couldn't recalibrate. Now, you can make a lot of small changes on this build. You can go with 3 Provident defense pieces instead of 2 Provident defense and 1 Grupo Sombra. Your stats will still be the same. You can remove the Contractor's Gloves and get another Providence defense piece for the extra 15% critical hit damage. You can remove the second Providence defense piece, which gives you 10% critical hit chance, and get a Cesca Vairoba piece. Your stats again will be the exact same. You can even remove the Coyote mask. Overall, there are a lot of ways to use this build, all very similar and with very identical stats and damage numbers. Depending on if you have everything maxed out or not, obviously going with Contractor's Gloves, which gives you damage to armor, will be better or worse than going with critical hit damage with Grupo Sombra, but that really depends on if you have all your critical hit damage mods, for example, maxed out or not. Depending on personal preference and how good your rolls and attributes are on each piece, then the best build for you might be slightly different. With the setup I showed you and my rolls being almost all maxed out, I have 48% critical hit chance, which will increase with the Coyote Mask talent and 183.7% critical hit damage, which will also increase. As you might have already noticed from the gameplay, this build hits very hard. However, accuracy and stability are all over the place, and that's what provokes me to try out this build over here. Damage wise, this build on the shooting range hits for about 900k less per bullet on headshots. However, it's so much more accurate and has so much better stability that you can hit more of your shots, thus making up for the lower damage. So let's get into the second build of the video, which revolves around weapon handling. As you can see, we're using the exact same weapon, the Coyote Mask, and a Seska piece for our holster for the 10% critical hit chance, and a Grupo for our backpack for the 15% critical hit damage with the Vigilance talent on it. Then we have 3 overload pieces, the gloves, the chest piece, and the fox barriers. 3 overload pieces will give us 10% rifle damage, 30% accuracy, and 30% weapon handling. Weapon handling means that for 1% of that, you get 1% stability, 1% accuracy, 1% reload speed, etc. So we will get another 30% stability and another 30% accuracy from that 30% weapon handling we get from the third brand set bonus. On the chest piece, I'm using the brace talent, which offers me another 45% weapon handling, which means we get another 45% accuracy and stability. All my rolls, like the previous build, are critical hit chance and critical hit damage, except one roll being 8% weapon handling, so we have a total of 49.2% critical hit chance and 171.5% critical hit damage. My total accuracy when brace is procced is 118%. 5% from weapon mods, 8% from weapon handling attribute, 45% from the talent, and another 60% from the brand set. My stability is 103% when brace is procced, 20% from weapon mods, 8% from weapon handling attribute, 45% from the talent, and another 30% from the brand set bonus. So as you can see from the gameplay, you can be extremely accurate, your weapon turns into a laser beam, and you can have lots of fun. I personally recommend this build to people who have a harder timing being accurate, even if they are on PC or on controller, it doesn't really matter. I haven't done the math. I don't know which build will have better DPS through the course of an entire control point or a mission, but from the feel I got by playing with both of these builds is that both of them are very strong and do the job and get the job done super easily. But I had a better time using the weapon handling build because I felt like wherever I looked at, I knew that's where my bullets were going. I didn't have to wait in between shots for my recoil and accuracy to settle back down, so to say. I could spam my weapon and I could get constant hits, unlike the full red DPS, the first build that I saw you in the video, where even though it's extremely powerful and it's not very bad at being accurate, if we're being honest here, you can be accurate with that build as well. However, it needs a little bit more attention, so to say, when you're shooting, to make sure that you're not spamming it too much, so you can reset the accuracy, you are not too far away from the enemies, and all that kind of stuff. Overall, 2 great builds that, in my opinion, are exceptionally well at what they do, and that still remain 2 of the best builds in the entire game when it comes to just DPS builds. Especially the first build shows how much DPS red rifle builds can output compared to what that new gear set was actually offering us in the PTS. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope that you liked the video. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts about rifle builds in general. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye bye.